Well, good afternoon. My name is Gisele, and I'm going to talk about the electronic sports, the esports, which is also known as cyber sports, or some people prefer also professional gaming. Well, the beginning. The first tournament that was registered happened in October 19, 1972. It was called the first Intergalactic Spacewar Olympics. And the venue was at the Artificial Intelligence Lab of Stanford University in California. And they were sponsored by the music magazine Rolling Stone, who provided beer and cash prize for the winners. Well, in 1980 happened the first video game tournament that was organized by a video game company. It was the Spacewar tournament held by Atari, and it had more than 10,000 participants. Well, in 1990, Nintendo also held their tournament. It was the Nintendo World Championship. Their finals were at the Universal Studios of Hollywood in California. And the second edition happened in 1994. It was called Nintendo Power Fest 94. It happened in San Diego, California. Well, back then the video games weren't really competitive, so these tournaments didn't happen very frequently. Those championships were more like a very expensive advertising campaign for the video game. Well, it happened a lot with the introduction of the two kind of games, the first-person shooter and the real-time strategy. I'm going to talk about the Western and the Eastern Hemisphere separately because the Western Hemisphere esports history is very associated with the first-person shooter games like Doom and Quake that were released in 1993 and 96. And the Eastern has a very strong real-time strategy esports history. And some examples are Command & Conquer that was released in 1995 and Warcraft in 1994. Well, in 1995, the first tournament for a first-person shooter game was held by Microsoft. They wanted to promote their new game, and so they held a tournament. The first prize would win a Ferrari race car. Well, in 1997 happened a very important thing in this sport. The Cyber Attack Professional League was launched, and it was considered the pioneer in professional video game tournament because it was the first one in a larger scale. Well, in 2008 they were acquired by an investment group in Abu Dhabi, I think it's one seat of United Arab Emirates. And since then, they haven't done anything at all. But in the past 10 years, they distributed more than $3 million in cash prize. Oh, in 2002 was the beginning of the Major League game. It's one of the biggest in the United States and had already participants from 28 countries, and also over 1 million participants online. It was important because it's the first televised console gaming in the USA. Well, in 2003 was the beginning of the Electronic Sports World Cup. The Electronic Sports World Cup is the major championship in the Western Hemisphere, and it's very respected because of its organization and ability to provide a good show for the spectators. They are originally created by Ligue Arena, a French company that used it to host smaller LAN events, and it's normally in the Europe summer, happens in the Europe summer, June, July, or August. They have a similar concept to the Union European of Football Association Champions League, where they allow several teams from the same country to compete, which is different from, for example, the Olympics, where they only allow one delegation to compete in their games. Well, I'm going to talk about the Eastern Hemisphere now, especially South Korea, because South Korea is the most developed esports community. It's the only country where the esports is self-sustainable. And also the cyber athletics there has the same stats as any other celebrity. Well, to understand why it's so strong in South Korea, we have to go back to 1998. Around this year happened three important things. The first one was the release of Starcraft. Starcraft is a really popular game in South Korea. To give you a better idea, in 2008, it was sold 9.5 million copies around the world, and in South Korea, it was 4.5 million, kind of half of them. Also, the government invested a lot in the broadcasting structure there, such as TV and internet. And it was important because most of the TV cables, like on GameNet, didn't have what to fill in their schedule. So they started to broadcast StarCraft games because it was kind of popular back then. Also, South Korea has the fastest internet in the world. And the third thing is the PC banks. PC banks are like the LAN houses in Korea. It's where young people hang out. Well, StarCraft became a pattern in the PC banks because it didn't require much PC power, and also because it was already popular. But since and the three of them made StarCraft a very big hype in South Korea. So like people talked about StarCraft because it had in the PC banks, and also because it was appearing in TV. But TV keep broadcasting StarCraft games because people talked about it. So it was very huge. Well, in 2000 happened two important things in South Korea. The first one is the creation of KISPA, Korean Sports Association. It's a part of the Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism, and it's the first government organ created to support esports in the world. Well, the other thing is the beginning of the World Cyber Games that was supported and sponsored by the Korea's Ministry of Culture and Tourism, Korean Ministry of Information and Communication. It was also sponsored by Samsung, and since 2006, it was also sponsored by Microsoft. Well, they state that they are the only one present in all 6 countries. They are highly inspired by the Olympics, and like the Olympics, each country that participates organized their own selective that will choose the delegation that will go to the World Finals. And this is the logo. The 4 rings symbolize the union and harmony and peace between countries and participants. And the black background is for the infinite possibilities of the world, the cyber world. Oh, this is their mascot. It's called Gamo, and the extended left feet is symbolizes the confidence and readiness for any challenge. Well, after the KISPA was founded, other countries also started to do the same thing. So in 2008, 8 countries decided to create an international esports federation. It had the original members are Belgium, Denmark, Germany, Netherlands, Romania, South Korea, Spain, and Switzerland. Well, in 2009, they held their first tournament, and in 2012, they had now they have 33 members. Brazil is also included, as you can see in the map. Well, they have 4 main objectives. The first one is to increase the member nations, and the other 3 is to standardize support and research on the esports. And that I took this picture from their site. Well, and now I'm going to talk about a little about esports in Brazil, more like their position in the two major championships. That is the Electronic Sports World Cup. This is the chart that represents the collocation that they got the first prize. As you can see, as I said before, in the western side, the first person shooters plays are stronger. So, as you can see by the Counter-Striker position they got. In 2006, they got their first place, and there is the commemoration picture that in the WoW Award ceremony that happened in 2006. Well, since the World Cyber Games are a little different for the Electronic Sports World Cup, as I said before, they held a regional tournament. In 2001, it was the first time that Brazil competed in the World Cyber Games, but it was already the second edition internationally. But in 2001, it wasn't a big of event. It was very small and happened at Bom Retiro. Well, in 2003, they're much bigger compared to the first edition. It happened in at the center in São Paulo. Oh, this is the chart that represents the positions Brazil got in the World Cyber Games Grand Finals. 2005 was the best collocation in their participation in the World Cyber Games, where they got first and second place for Need for Speed Underground and second place for Warhammer. This is a photo of the World Cyber Games Grand Finals that happened in Singapore. Well, this is the continuation of the chart. And as you can see, the Caron 3D, which is a billiard game, simulation game, became a really strong point in Brazil. Oh, this is the logo that happened in the World Cyber Games 2001 Pan American Championship. I believe it was the second time that it was hosted in São Paulo, and it had 10 countries. Well, Brazil also has its own esports confederation. It's the CBEC, which literally translating would be Connected Esports Brazilian Confederation. It was inaugurated in August 2009, and its objective is like insert the sport in Brazilian community with a flag against violence and drugs, and as a matter of fact, support esports in the same saying that they should have the same values as any other sports. Well, one thing that I always read as I was doing my research, it was always in any article that I read, is if the esports can be considered a sport. I didn't thought it was a very important discussion, but as a matter of fact, they really want the esports to be considered a sport. The first reason is because the video game has a very negative image in society. Like always that something about the video game is broadcast in TV, for example, is always something like, oh, the guy don't do his homework because he's playing video game. It's not like, oh, they don't show like research about the video game is improving his quick mind or something like that. And the other thing that they want the esports to be considered a sport is because it would be attract a lot of media attention, and it will be much more easier to them to get sponsors, because right now the most of the sponsors are PC related companies, and also some energetic drinks are also started to sponsor. Well, the dictionary definition for sport is, most of them is the first one. That is a physical activity that's governed by a set of rules or customs and often engaged in competitivity. Well, the first one is always stronger in our mind, especially because of the Olympics. Because the Olympics don't, in the 19th century, didn't have like chess in their competition. But before that, the third one, an active pastime, a recreation, or a game, it was also strong back then. But now the first one is much more in our mind. Well, to explain better the main problem, I would say that I will use the Alan Gutman's model of sport. Alan Gutman is a sport historian that had won a lot of awards from the U.S. and Olympic Committee, and also the International Olympic Committee. The first and second criteria are generally accepted because it's a game, and since the beginning of tournaments like the World Cyber Games and the Electronic Sports World Cup, they are really competitive. For example, in 2011, Starcraft had around the world cash prize bigger than $2 million. And in this year, I guess in November, Riot Games announced give a $5 million cash prize to the League of Legends game. Well, but the third point that is what normally diverse people, because most of the because this sport is really less physical demanding than most of sports like soccer or volleyball, but it's also much more physical demanding than some sports, some activities considered sports by the Olympics Committee, like chess, bowling, or archery. So, I also, for what I understand, people don't think that it should be used the word e-sport, because most of them don't think it's a sport. But I don't play Starcraft, but people say that if you play Starcraft, it will be as tiring as playing tennis, but I'm not sure about that. So most of prefer the word pro gaming. Well, that's it. Does someone have a question?
Is the World Cyber game every year or each 4 years?
It happens every year. The first edition was in South Korea, obviously, and then I think it was 2 editions that were in United States, San Francisco and Los Angeles, I believe. Not sure, really sure. Well, I'm going to show you a video that. Oh, there's a question.
How do you see the difference between sports in Western and centralized? Mainly RTS and some Dota, some League of Legends, and mainly RTS games. Besides the sponsoring thing, besides the branding, there are some significant difference between the people, the culture.
I guess it's like more it's how the population see. in South Korea, the cyber athletes, the gamers that play officially, they have most of them have house where they train. It's a professional. It's not a hobby for them, and that's what I think is the biggest difference. Because in Asia culture, they really are seen as a professional. One guy who plays Starcraft wants $205,000 per year, and I don't know if they counted like the commercial that he must participate or something like that. And it's not very common as a matter of fact, it's not very common here in Brazil. In the United States, it's already getting bigger. And for what I see, some of them earn their money playing online and allowing people to watch them. And then they can get, with advertisement in the internet, they can earn their money. But it's not really, it's like trying to be an artist here. And there, it's a little more like they already have a culture in this. Like some cyber athletes say in interviews that they wanted to be cyber athletes because he watches someone playing on TV and wanted to be like that. So I think that's the biggest difference, not really the gaming themselves. Okay? Anyone else? Well, I'm going to show a video that was the first article. It was in the first article that I read about esports.
주로 잘 때 남은 대회를 생각하잖아요. 금메달도 받고 상금도 받고 많은 환호도 받고 뭐 이런 굉장히 기분 좋은 상상하고요.
At 21 years old and competing on a tournament's main stage, all eyes are on MVP. We've got screaming fans, hundreds of thousands in prize money, and it's all because of a video game. He's a professional gamer, a top player of the online game Starcraft II. And in a place where gaming is a pro sport, MVP is in the major leagues. So what is life like for one of Korea's top players? We find out as we go inside the life of Korea's MVP.
네, 안녕하세요. 정종현이라고 하고요. 연습하고 생활하는 숙소로 한번 들어가 보시죠. 지금 연습하는 사람은 13명에서 14명 정도 되고요. 지금 보시면 다들 열심히 연습을 하고 있습니다. 저희가 자는 침실이 저쪽에.
The advantage that the Koreans have over other non-Korean teams is they get to actually stay together. Inside of a pro gamer training house, you're going to have few rooms with bunk beds, you're going to have a kitchen, sometimes they have cooks, and you're going to have generally 1 to 2 big rooms that are just full of computers where they're all grinding out games and discussing strategies. It gives them a huge edge.
제가 처음 시작했던 게임은 스타크래프트 1을 제일 먼저 시작했고요. 일단 제가 그런 뭐 전략 시뮬레이션이나 뭐 그런 게임 자체를 아예 처음 해봤기 때문에 굉장히 신기했고요. 처음에는 하면서 이제 재미를 느껴서 계속 게임에 빠져들게 됐어요.
대부분의 엄마들이 애들이 뭐 컴퓨터하고 이러면 많이 받는다고 집에서. 근데 저희는 그렇게 무난하게 갔던 것 같아요. 저희는 어릴 때 몸이 아팠었어요. 몸이 아파서 이 언어도 많이 늦었어요. 컴퓨터 같은 거 하고 그래도 그거를 막 그렇게 강하게 반대하고 이러지는 않아서 쉽게 잘할 줄알고 생각을 못했죠.
In Starcraft II, MVP is hands down the best player. He is a genius, he trains really hard, and he has had the most success of any other player in his team.
Success he's worked for, on and offline. MVP's coach, who is once a pro gamer himself, keeps a strict hold on the team, monitoring their diet and exercise to optimize his players' performance.
체력적으로 보완을 해야 될 필요성도 분명히 존재해요. 게임이라는 것이 게임만 한다고 무조건 되는 게 아니라 기본적으로 정신적으로, 마인드 쪽으로, 그 다음에 육체적으로 둘 다 뛰어나야지 앞서갈 수 있기 때문에.
Soon, all of MVP's training will be tested. Today, he and his coach are traveling south to the World Cyber Games. Their trip only takes a few hours by high-speed rail, but many are making long journeys across the globe, gunning to beat MVP on his home turf. The favorite to win it all, MVP dominates his opponents quickly, determining their strategy and striking with his own battlefield. In Starcraft, you gotta think fast and dominate the battlefield in this real-time war game.
저는 좀 방어적인 스타일을 굉장히 좋아하거든요. 제가 상대 그 공격하는 거를 막는 걸 좀 잘해요. 그런 거 덕분에 좀 잘하는 것 같고요.
He's not just good. At this moment, MVP is the best Korean gamer in Starcraft II. In the fourth and final round, it comes down to two people. MVP will take on Shigua from China.
무대가 크다 보니까 그 관중도 굉장히 많잖아요. 그래가지고 긴장이 되고 기대도 굉장히 많이 돼요. 그 이겼을 때 환호라든지 그런 걸 받을 수 있잖아요. 이기고 나올 때는 금메달을 땄다는 그런 것 때문에 굉장히 기뻤고 한국에게 금메달을 줬다는 줄 수 성공을 했다는 뭐 그런 것 때문에 굉장히 뿌듯했어요.
MVP won and secured the gold for Korea. But the celebration is fleeting because another tournament is just days away.
굉장히 좋아하고요. 제가 상대 공격하는 거를 막는 걸 잘해요. 그런 거 덕분에 잘하는 것 같고요.
He's not just good. At this moment, MVP is the best Korean gamer in Starcraft II. In the fourth and final round, it comes down to two people. MVP will take on Shigua from China.
무대가 크다 보니까 그 관중도 굉장히 많잖아요. 그래가지고 긴장이 되고 기대도 굉장히 많이 돼요. 그 이겼을 때 환호라든지 그런 걸 받을 수 있잖아요. 이기고 나올 때는 금메달을 땄다는 그런 것 때문에 굉장히 기뻤고 한국에게 금메달을 줬다는 줄 수 성공을 했다는 뭐 그런 것 때문에 굉장히 뿌듯했어요.
MVP won and secured the gold for Korea. But the celebration is fleeting because another tournament is just days away.
Just as curiosity, I remember that the World Cyber Games 2012 is beginning today and will be going on until Sunday, December 2. So just for you know. Well, thanks for your attention.